we have to have user-centric leadership, right?
Yeah.
If you look at this marketing world that we're in, or marketing-driven world that we're in, the reason why UX has historically been so critically important is because we're the bottom-up and top-down.
And if you want to know how to be really successful in your job, it's the older you get, we start to learn diplomacy. You start to learn things about power. How does power work? What are incentives? How does my VP get paid? Because once you understand that and you tie all of that into your business goals and what the overall business goals are, you're cooking with gas, son.
The best PMs I've ever worked for are ex-UXers, UX practitioners who ascended to product management.
There's a lot of people out there that are looking for work and they don't understand, and they're 45 to 55 years old and they can't find work. And I go look at their portfolios, and this is going to sound harsh, and I don't mean for it to, but last year I probably looked at 200 portfolios. And man, what I came to the conclusion is there's a whole lot of people that don't want to work. When I look at your portfolio and you've got 20 years of experience and the first thing I see is a design thinking process at the top of a thing, or you're showing me a fucking double diamond, I'm like, you're an idiot.
We need more people like yourself in those leadership roles.
Right.
Who then can coach, empower, add more roles, fight the good fight, so to speak.
Hey, welcome back. I have another exciting episode to share with you today, and I'm chatting with two guests. And if you've been following the episodes so far, you definitely heard or watched some of those sessions with them. It's Thomas Wilson and Dr. Nick Fine, the titans of both user research and service design and general UX industry. Now, in this session, we're going to deep dive into ageism in UX and tech, and also how to optimize your career for those later years. Because let's face it, you might be following IC path or maybe management path, and maybe you face all that uncertainty to do with emerging tech, and also how the craft itself is shaping up to be. So we're going to cover all of that and much more. I hope you enjoy this episode. If so, do share with a friend. That certainly helps. And without further ado, here's a chat with Thomas Wilson and Dr. Nick Fine.
We have a meaty subject and big topic to discuss, and I guess it's a follow-up from both of your episodes on this podcast. Because with Nick, I think we did 2 sessions so far. With Thomas, we had 1 session, but both of you touched the ageism and also shifting dynamics in tech and how people can get prepared for it. And before we jump into it, I just want to call out some statistics, which I, used AI to capture as much as I could, lazy research, so to speak. But by the UK stats, at least, every third person, which is aged, I think, 25 plus, is already feeling like they're being discriminated because of their age.
Wow.
And I think another stat, which was quite interesting, it was that the average person in tech right now is roughly 38 years old. And this is purely UK. So I imagine US side is likely going to be even lower, I presume. And my obviously hypothesis is that US pays much more. There is bigger talent.
I think
pool.
it's probably worse. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's probably also people are able to retire maybe early. But again, this is something maybe we can unpack.
This is completely honest and open. I've been looking at the door for the past 5 to 8 years.
What does that mean?
I've been looking to get out and away from my industry, from my practice, from everything I've built myself to do for the past 20 years, to walk away from it and do something in retail or something more entrepreneurial and nothing to do with IT or digital.
And then second
that was started by the tax change here in the UK, because that fundamentally changed things. But the way that UX and product has gone in the past 5 years, the way that ageism is just rife and it's just industry standard now, means that it is impossible to do good work based on all the skills and experience that I've earned hard over many years. I can't monetize that. I can't make my businesses and companies I work for, my clients, I can't do that. Everything is a fight.
Right.
And I'm this grumpy, angry old man. And let me tell you this finally, because this is really critically important. If anybody thinks that people are going to muscle us out and we're going to sit on the outside quietly and not do everything we can to point the finger at the people that have done this with evidence and logic, damn straight. And that's what we're doing right now.
Rage Against the Machine. To second what Dr. Nick just said, I was a director 23 years ago, not to suggest how old I am. I'm old. I'm in my mid 50s. But the funny thing is those comments that you sent to us on Nick and I's video where people were calling either him or I a boomer.
Yeah,
Dude,
angry
we're
boomers.
Gen X, man. Come on, we're Gen X. We're not boomers. We're very
No,
different.
but
And there's an
I think you have to anticipate that even with this chat, we're gonna get a lot of that. Because I mean, we are old or old enough to, mature at least at what UX is about, or like how UX should be done, or like the components of UX. So I anticipate the same comments, by the way.
Let me clarify something for you, but for the audience, not for you guys, right? Because boomers are my parents, are Tom's parents, are probably V's
My parents
too, right?
are boomers.
They're our
Right.
parents. They're like the post-war generation. They call boomers baby boomers because after the war, everyone had lots of babies, and that's that, right? Now,
Yeah.
we're the children of boomers. Now, this is the really important part for anybody listening that isn't Gen X or boomer. We are the linking generation. Okay, we are the link between the old world and the new world. I was the leader of my generation in tech uptake and early adoption. One of the old school computer geeks. Probably Tom was too. Probably most UXers and folks had something to do with that. That's part of our heritage. So we are digital natives of the first kind. We had the internet before everybody.
The first
we had
people.
SMS. You know what I mean? We led the curve. We've got all of that experience. I was at the forefront of the .com boom. I've got all those learnings from all that failure, right? All of that stuff. So if you ignore the linking generation, you're just a complete reset. And the reason why there's so much mental health and lost people is because they're not taking anything from the previous generation.
Right.
Mhm.
That's the problem. They're off on their own, starting on their own, being ripped off by every corporation and brand out there.
Yeah, but how, like, to me, like the biggest mystery has been, and I think Thomas, you kind of mentioned in our session, was that slip of UX. So like, if we go back to the point that, okay, that older generation were the UXers that performed, that set the standard, that
Right.
ensured, like, I remember very strict rules to UX.
And the
So
standards have changed. They have changed. You're right.
But I remember, like, when I started, I was very unconfident to call myself a UX designer because I knew how much
you had
I
to
have
have some
to learn.
shame. There's some humility, man. You didn't just call
Yeah.
yourself shit that you weren't.
No,
And these days,
yeah.
these kids, they're calling themselves like, you know what I
No.
mean? They're
Tom-
like, I'm the VP of XYZ, and there's no evidence of them ever being anything before that showed that progression in their profile or their resume.
But you both had leads and seniors keeping you honest and
Right.
humble and
No,
keeping your ego in check.
I think what I had, probably Thomas, I'm sure what I had was a lot of online personas which had very big gravitas, like super strong,
Yes.
super vocal.
I worked with a
people-
bunch of creative directors and design directors who were like, "Devil wears Prada." Like, I had mice thrown at me. I had to go out and party with some of these people, dude, and they partied like fucking Charlie Sheen. Like, you know what I mean? Like, in the 90s. And the thing is, right now, I was just talking about this with a couple of other people online. In the 90s, in the early 2000s, people were self-taught, just like Dr. Nick said. We just started adopting the internet, and we were excited about it.
That's
we
exactly
were passionate
what I
about it and
also had,
learning,
yeah.
and we were learning about it. But right now, and if you started back then, you could have an AA, an associate's degree. You could have a background in some kind of design or illustration and eventually be decent at web. Now, I'm saying hell no. Don't take anyone that doesn't have at least a 4-year degree. And the reason is you have to show that you can at least commit to going to school for 5 minutes to learning something. All right. Yes. Like, there's plenty of leaders that are 50 years old that I'm saying they don't need degrees, but you do now. You definitely have.
I understand what you're saying. There needs to be something that allows the younger generations to demonstrate that they can learn, that they're willing to learn, and that they've got some stamina. Historically, we call that a degree, right?
Right.
In the new world, if it's something else, that's okay too. But we need something
a measurement,
that clarifies
some
that,
kind of measurement or validation. And that's one of the things that I was talking about with regards to a portfolio. You know, what's crazy is what's happening right now, Nick, is the last 10 years, we've just seen the complete dismantling of UX and the value of it and a lot of things like that. But really, straight up, guys, this is happening to service design right now. It's happening in product.
To agile.
It's happening to
name
product.
Anything that the masses get, they break because the algorithm is something like, I don't understand it. I'll acquire and cherry pick the bits that I want, and I'll reinvent the rest. And the rest I'll get from the misinformation on social media. And then you just join the herd of misinformation.
Yeah,
it's like mass psychogenic illness. Just people are just repeating stupid shit.
They're just toxic memes, man.
Yeah, but would you agree with a statement that it has been a slow decline, and
It's
it's
been,
going to be a
I don't know, is
continuous
10 years
decline.
slow? It's rapid. The
Yeah.
last 5 years, it's been explosive, I
Yeah.
would say.
I mean, it
5.
went to shit in a couple of years, man. Like
Yeah.
between 2015 and 2018, everything went out the window. And was the problem. I was screaming at the top of my lungs, alienating every recruiter, because I was saying,
too.
guys, stop putting creative directors in the roles that I want to get into, because they're only going to hire their own image, if you know what I mean. And that's exactly.
And
And
stop
10 years
hiring
later,
UI UX people and using the
Yes.
term UI UX.
yes, and that's how UX UI got a practice when it doesn't mean anything, and people are still calling it. It's become an adjective, or it's become language.
Yeah.
Right.
Have you UX UI'd that thing yet? I mean, like, what the hell, man?
You know, I mentor a few people, and some of the people I mentor go to a very well-known school here in the States. And I'm not going to badmouth it, but it's one of the only schools that you can get a service design degree. And I was talking to somebody yesterday, and he was like, "Yeah, we have an industrial design professor who's been out of the game. He hasn't been in work for 20-something years, and he's a professor." And this is a problem too in academia, is there's a lot of people who don't do the work. They haven't been in organizations, and they're teaching bullshit. And one of the things he said is at this school that you can get a master's degree in service design, they're teaching them to have physical portfolios, like books, dude, that you carry around. I'm like, what do you keep?
It's
are
a
you
bit
kidding?
hipster. Very hipster. But
who are you?
Well,
Who are you walking that around with like a showcase?
I made a note of that, right? Because that's, again, I'm glad you made that point, Tom. We should talk about this, right? This is not related to the ageist agenda, but it's critically important. I find that most of the people that are broadcasting, the most populist people broadcasting the most amount of misinformation, are the people like your professor who have been away from the actual work
Too long,
or some of them have never been there.
right?
There's a certain product author who spent a minute there, right, and hasn't been there since, so doesn't understand any chemistry, product, team dynamics, any of that stuff,
Right.
in the modern world. So if you look at your favorite influencer on LinkedIn or YouTube, look and see when were they last doing hands dirty work, and how long did they do it for?
We
and
know
how
who
many
these people are.
organizations did they
And
do
some
it
of these
for?
people have 50, 100,000 followers, man.
No, there's a couple of them got 150,000.
Let me pause here just a sec for a small moment. No, it's fine. I think, would you then say, but there's a lot of these cases, right? Like where people, I guess, went to maybe deep in academia, or maybe they did some like a deep consulting and kind of escaped and came back. There's a lot of those personalities, but they're kind of like survivors of ageism in a way, in my head at least, because they found a way to prosper and maybe give up some of those things.
Context is important with what you just said. If somebody starts to be a professor at age 55, hey, cool. And they were in the game from the time they were 24 until 55, they have a breadth of experience. When I see someone who had 5 years of experience and now all of a sudden they're teaching shit and selling things online and regurgitating other people's content, those guys are idiots. And that is exactly who is selling all these giant books. They're people that were like interaction designers for 5 minutes, people who were a startup. If you go look at Eric Rice's background, if you look at his background, like if you look at Dylan Field, if you look at these people's backgrounds, they were nothings, and then they wrote books that exploded. Okay, and everybody just started doing shit that people who are basically, had a dev background for 3 to 5 years, and then they wrote a book, and now all of a sudden they're doing something else. He's a venture capitalist now, but that book did so much damage because other books piggybacked on it. Teresa Torres, Jeff Goldthwait, they all piggybacked onto that book. You know what I mean?
Yeah, spicy takes, but I like it. I think it's also good to be, point at something as
we're
well
telling the
to
truth.
illustrate. I know. I think
not lying.
but that to me is also because it's only selected few. That's why I'm saying like they're the survivors of maybe ageism, because at that point a lot of the people might think, oh shit, I need alternatives.
No. You know how there's a terrible saying: those who can do, those who can't teach. So we're going to take that and modify it. Those who can do, those who can't, ascend to leadership and or write a book, or hit the speaker circuit,
or create online courses for.
Yes, or exactly that, Tom. Tom, this is exactly it. Because psychologically speaking, I think there's this massive pressure to be successful, like so that you can show it on social media, etc. And compare with there's so much social comparison. People feel awful about themselves, so
Yes,
they want to
they're
be successful.
addicted to
Right?
clicks.
They,
They're
al-
addicted to.
they
They're
also need
obsessed
to earn
by
more money because because money's tight right now, right?
Right.
In order to do these things, you go to leadership because practitioner is hard, right? And or you write a book or you get on the circuit, right? I'm going to say this. I met some people, there were some great people I met last year. I did a number of conferences last year, but there are a couple of people who you can tell who actually said, I challenged some of the content in a sidebar chat to say, that's not strictly true what you said. He went, yeah, but it doesn't really matter. It's all about the narrative and the game. You know? Just shut up and play the game. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me, man? Like, people are learning from you.
Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't that bother you?
That has happened to me. Hey, Nick, that has happened to me on LinkedIn where I've messaged somebody and they're like, hey man, I'm working over here. I'm trying to sell something. I'm like, yeah, but you've never used this tool that you're selling that you're sponsored by, and this tool sucks. And the guy basically said in the message, he's like, dude, this is my livelihood. I'm trying to sell shit over here because I get paid. Yeah. And I'm like, but you're passing yourself off as an industry leader and you're an influencer. You know what I mean? So you can't just sell anything, asshole.
Yeah.
That's why I try not to sell anything and try to stay ragingly authentic.
Yeah. But this is where it's interesting. Like, I think you, like Nick and Thomas, you outline, I guess, several paths you could be taking, right? Like that was leadership.
Yeah.
A salesman, authorship, I guess. But a salesman of courses or knowledge to me, or maybe thought leader, I guess, would be a better take.
You need a thing to sell, and that's why people invent these things like you know
but
what I mean?
if you're gonna say that you need that, then people are gonna take and they're gonna kind of role model those people who do that, and that not necessarily is helping them. To me, like if I take one of the comments from one of the videos, it said basically, well, if you're 40 or 50, and I'm paraphrasing, you should just be already a manager. Like, why are you bothering with the craft?
That's why people think that people like me and Thomas, who are practitioners, are maybe losers or something.
Or old, yeah.
We're not successful because I'm not chief experience officer. I'm not director of experience. I'm not.
Some of us love to do the work, and some of us have brains, have neurodivergent brains that excel when we do head down work as opposed to people leadership.
No. Or people like me. I'm a psychologist. I'm a neurodiverse psychologist. I read people. I'm really good at it. I'm hyper empathic, and I say things before they come out of people's mouths. I mean, it's also really rude. That's not the point. The point is I'm on a level, and people can get that, and I get the best out of my participants.
I also, I represent the managers because I chose management path like 7 years ago. And
I did too, and I hated it.
Yeah, well, it has ups and downs, right? Like, but to me, it's like I have no other. I could go back to AC days and maybe craft, but I would be very slow. I know that for sure. I would be very behind from what other people are like. And I also experience, when I'm hiring for my roles, a lot of the former heads off come in, a lot of managers, former managers, and it's very clear that they've been there, done that, but not necessarily can do it now.
Yep.
So that's also like one of those dynamics, which is quite iffy. But I feel like it would be nice to also chat, like, why do you two decided to, to I guess, continue with a craft? Because a lot of the people are going to be like, shit, if I'm like I would presume you're in 40s, right? Like roughly like early 40s, maybe.
What age?
Yeah.
I'm 54.
I'm 54.
Well,
1970, brother.
It's that probably lotion or moisturizer or whatever you use.
Goddamn right, we're good looking.
I had a full head of hair before I entered this industry.
Yeah, but my take is still like, a lot of the people are gonna question it and say, hey, maybe it's not secure option. Like, why did you?
I'll tell you mine too after Nick. I'll go after Nick.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's an inherent power in practitioner. Yeah. I lose my power like Samson in his hair again. If I stop practicing, I lose my currency, my knowledge, my ability, my vision, my skills. I lose everything. And it goes within 6 to 8 weeks. And then, you know what I mean? If you wanted to get it back, you could get it back. It'll be a bit rusty, but you would get it back again. Those subroutines are still in there. They're just under dust and rust, but they can come back. But they will be in archive mode. You won't have direct access to them. The point being is so I stay practitioner because it keeps me sharp. It keeps me good. But number two is I can add the most amount of value, money, by being me. What I just said before about being the neurodiverse psychologist in UX as a researcher, I said I get the best out of my participants. When I say the best, I mean the nuggets, the golden valid nuggets that make us money. That is no respect for that, but I know it's very valuable, so I'm not walking away from it. I just got to be able to do it, and that means Thomas, me, you. We have to fight to create the space to be able to do the work so we can make them the money, which is nuts. Because historically, we've had a manager or a product manager or somebody or delivery lead creating that space for us. The product managers now have just come in and taken it all away.
I will tell you that when I was in leadership roles in large organizations, I had 14, 16 people under me or whatever. I spent the majority of my time in meetings. I spent the majority of my time doing sales, meaning, doing all the sales. The sales guys were just appointment setters. Okay. And then they would call in us because we were the big guns and could talk shop and, get everybody wet and excited to spend money. So I ended up being sales and people leadership. And now I'll be frank with you, man. This will make me sound like a boomer. I don't like managing people now. I feel like I bring the most value doing that individual contributor work. And one of the things that concerns me about AI is, yes, I'm using it for all sorts of things in research and design right now. And I'm using it to collect things and help synthesize. But the most important part of doing discovery or research, if you're talking about evaluative, is that synthesis. It's getting your hands dirty and processing this shit from over here and atomizing it and putting it over here and turning it into something. It's those stage gates and those steps of understanding and that analysis. And once you do that, and you give that over to AI, then you don't know anything anymore, and you're no longer the librarian and the keeper of the information. And the thing is I'm the go-to guy wherever I work about whatever the subject is. They come to me and say, hey, what were they thinking about this? And what was going on with this? This other department needs that information that you have. Can you share with them what? And so if it's AI did all that for you, you can't answer those questions. You can't go to one of your 10 Miro boards and go, here it is right here.
And Tom, when AI eventually fails or drops people really in it and they realize, shit, we built the wrong thing because AI told us the wrong thing or misinterpreted that research, we're going to be in constant practice. And they'll realize, actually, we need some humans to do this part. Oh, look, there's two guys who've been doing this consistently without stopping. Those are the guys we need.
Right.
So that's why I'm in it.
I said this very thing to Debbie, Nick. I said, I think that because AI is about to be able to do the promise, let's just face it. Let's put something real crazy out there. All right. The promise of the internet and the promise of software for 30 years has been no code. It's been, how do researchers and designers make cool shit without having to go through Agile and 20 different developers and taking all this. They want to pretend like it's us that takes a long time and, is, wasteful. But I say it's the other way around. And the thing is the promise of no code is about to come to fruition, hopefully. And if it does with one of these new Repletes or whatever the other one is, it starts with a C, I'm forgetting it, but Cursor, Replete. Yeah. If something happens to where we can, guys like me, people like Debbie, people like Dr. Nick, and people like Darren Hood, they can just type in, hey, go make me this and create progressive disclosure and do that. We can start rattling off, terms and shit that these young kids can't rattle off. And we'll know how to.
Wouldn't you rather have a Tom or me style product manager, not cool product manager,
right?
But bot manager or whatever,
right?
Product producer.
Yeah.
But than somebody who's got no experience.
I sense that you're very confident, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be, but you seem like, I'm sure listeners as well are going to perceive it like you are like, okay, I'm an IC. I know what I'm doing. I know what the value I deliver in specific numbers. I know my strengths, maybe weaknesses too. Like management, let's say maybe it's not something you want to do. But where is it coming from? I guess, I think if you were to look again, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here, but if you look at the comments or the people around or like all those people who, just are scared of like what's next and the ageism kicks in and maybe they are in like 35, which that's where by statistics where the ageism start, they would be, crapping their pants. They would be thinking, okay, I probably need to do that thought leadership, management, maybe career change too, maybe become a product manager. Like how are you so confident?
My history, my track record, right? And the thing I say at conferences, and I say to newbies and mentees, is I'm not the oracle. I'm not a guru. I don't have all the answers, but I do have all the methods to get all the answers. Those methods have kept me and my clients safe and successful for over a decade. It's because we've binned all that stuff. That's the problem. So I care about validity. I care that what's coming out of people's mouths or the way they're behaving is as close to real as is possible. It isn't a checkbox exercise. Right? There's too much of that going on, and therefore it's my principles, it's my user centricity, it's my process, it's all of and my methodologies, my choice of methodologies, my bedside manner, all of the things that have become part of our practice that make us useful. That's what gives me confidence, because it always has worked, and there's no reason why it shouldn't work in the future.
You bring up a really important point. A lot of the things that we do are evergreen. There's a lot of artifacts, a lot of processes. If you look at your standard, kind of like, scientific process, the observation and identification of a problem, the forming a hypothesis, the experimentation and the data collection, and then you go into analysis and conclusion and some type of solutioning. If you look at that sort of thing, that stuff is evergreen. That's, you know what I mean? And if you can apply those processes inside of a large organization or inside of a startup and you can get great results, you're always going to be in demand. And, backing up to a thing that you said, I've done management, and I told you I'm good at it. I'm good at team building. I'm good at sales. I built an agency up basically from nothing to $7.5 million a year. And that was 20 years ago at 76% profitability. That's not a shitty business. That's a great profitable business. But anyway, one of the things that I wanted to mention is it's important to note that this stuff is hard. But when you can get those IC roles, when someone says, "Hey, we need someone to just come crack this nut and figure out what's going on. We need you to get in this problem space and just figure out what's happening, because we're hemorrhaging money over here." And you can be an army of one. You can be an individual contributor, a contractor, a consultant, whatever you want to call it. That's what I'm doing right now. And they're hiring me. And I went from start to finish, and I showed them how an $8 million problem is really a $500 million or close to problem. And from there, just in the last few weeks, I've written 123 product requirements documents. You know what I mean? And I'm talking with user stories, acceptance criteria, summaries, and I budgeted every single player on the thing. Does that sound like something a service designer does or your average UXer does? That's a product leader.
Yeah. But is the bottom line here, I guess, is that you just feel like you accrued a lot of skills and maybe that learning, which we mentioned? Because I feel like, again, I'm just going to put like a random statement here that maybe 90% of the people who might be listening or who are in those roles at 40, 50 years old, and they're kind of reading, oh shit, I still need to do maybe 15 years until my state pension kicks in, or another decade until I can get, access to my SIP funds or things of that nature. I don't know what the US equivalent of that
is. It's retirement, Social Security.
Ultimately, yes, the pension fund. And I think like they probably are maybe in a more difficult position.
They are,
because might have lesser skills. Maybe they spend, I don't know like what the good example is, but maybe they spend a decade doing Figma. Just doing a Figma doesn't make you a designer, let's just put it that way. And that's just one skill set, one specific like family of skills.
And I think we spoke about this before. And this is you can call this ageism all day. I mean, how do you talk about ageism with 3 old guys on a call? So the thing is if you're a 54-year-old Figma designer and that's your wheelhouse and that's what is making UI, you need to know that eventually the Reaper is coming for you. Nobody wants a 55 or 60-year-old UI designer. They don't. They want 25 and 30-year-olds. And the reason why they want those 25 and 30-year-olds is because they can bully you and push you around and make you go do 90 screens in a day and make you, you know what I mean? And abuse the hell out of you. And the average person, once you get to a certain pedigree and a certain age, you work smart, not hard. You know what I mean? I show up for work and I can do more in 2 hours than most people do in 15 or a week. Past knowledge, past the success stories, past failures. And the idea that, you know what I mean? There's a lot of people out there that are looking for work and they don't understand, and they're 45 to 55 years old and they can't find work. And I go look at their portfolios, and this is going to sound harsh and I don't mean for it to, but last year I probably looked at 200 portfolios. And man, what I came to the conclusion is there's a whole lot of people that don't want to work. When I look at your portfolio and you've got 20 years of experience, and the first thing I see is a design thinking process at the top of a thing, or you're showing me a fucking double diamond, I'm like, you're an idiot. You're not going to get work. You know, I am a hiring manager, and I'm telling you, my stuff doesn't look like that. When you look at my case studies, I've got the entire story, every single phase. If there's 4 phases, I've got, you know, what was the initial problem? How was it presented to me? What did I determine was really going on? And I show all of my artifacts, and then I show the conclusion, you know, what happened. And if I didn't have a conclusion, if there was no, like if it didn't come to fruition or something, it got sunsetted or deprecated, I tell that story. I'm like, hey man, I did all this really cool work, but it never came to fruition. But look at this cool stuff I did.
You know what, Tom? I let my portfolio let it go. It's literally 10 years stale now or something, because it's all exactly as you said, full process narrative. Like, here's what I did, here's how I did it, who I did it with. But it's because it's post-it notes and whiteboards and IAs and black and white screenshots of Azure, right? It's the least sexy portfolio in the history of portfolios, and it looks like a boomer folio. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I just gave up.
I'll show you mine. We'll get on a call and I'll show you mine.
Here's the point. When you look at a UX UI portfolio and a user's,
it's all icing and no cake.
And exactly that. And that's the point. And that's what I see now when I'm working on actual products with actual designers.
Right.
They've just got one lens, which is such a thin visual layer.
High fidelity. Got to be pretty. It's got to be pretty.
No, but they've got no idea about behavior.
Right.
Like, other than, you know, between pages.
Right.
But
they jump right into high fidelity design, and you go look at their portfolio, and it's just like, it's all screens, and it's like, how did you get to this point? Who told you what to do?
Ask them about the primary navigation order.
Yeah.
What decisions went into that? And they go, oh, like they didn't even consider it.
This is, I guess, that skill gap still, right? Like, but what would be your advice, let's say, for a 40-year-old person with fancy portfolio with that visual layer, the surface, as we
move around, learn, be open to have that growth mindset to where you're going and learning about things like service design, primary research. There's plenty of people. I know lots of people who are the world-class qualitative, and I know world-class evaluative. And some people do mixed methods and do both, and they're really great. But some people specialize. But if you have one kind of specialization in research, but you're also a decent visual designer, you're also decent in Figma, you're also pretty good at service design and understand systems thinking, and you can bang out kick-ass mapping, you know what I mean? And tell stories. The most important thing is telling stories. You know, if you can tell stories and say, hey, I went and learned this, and this is why it's important to us, and this is how we're going to go make more money, or, you know, how we're going to solve a problem. If it's all about telling stories. And you can find out real quick about someone, interviewing them, if they can't tell a story and their portfolio shows that they can't tell a story visually. And the thing is that's how we win over the hearts and minds of stakeholders. And that's how we make our change managers. And if you want to know how to be really successful in your job, it's the older you get, we start to learn diplomacy. You start to learn things about power. How does power work? What are incentives? How does my VP get paid? How does the person that the stakeholder that owns this, that's the owner of this particular project, the sponsor, how are they being measured and getting paid? Because once you understand that and you tie all of that into your business goals and what the overall business goals are, you're cooking with gas, son. And a lot of people just don't understand that part. They don't understand any of that stuff that I just said. They're just head down making buttons and design systems. And one of the most dangerous things that we did is in the last 5 to 10 years, and Nick will probably say amen to this, is we started way overpaying these production monkeys. We started paying them $300,000-$400,000 at these FANG companies. They're making so much money and they don't know anything.
The problem is as I keep saying, can we stop using the FANG companies as some kind of
as some type of measurement, right?
Yeah, they're bloody awful, right? The UX, they don't evaluate their stuff, and that's really obvious, right? I just recently signed up to Etsy as a vendor. My God, it should be shut down. They're holding money. That it's absolutely shockingly bad, right? And that's just one of many. You give me any of them, I can destroy them easily. Right. So there's that. So when somebody comes into your organization and they spent a year at one of these FANG companies and they're swanning around and they're, you know, right. And it's like, okay, what you've got is somebody who is used to having big budgets and a certain in-house style, and that's appropriate for that brand and that thing. You cannot say, Okay, look at the Spotify cross-functional teams thing that went around every single management consultancy. It was a wrong meme. It didn't even work for Spotify. Spotify had to come out and say, stop copying us. It didn't work for us, or you know what I mean? And people are still trying to do it.
When I started my UX career, I remember taking a course specifically on portfolios, and that was for UX, one of the first courses, and it had to do something with resumes. And I think it still persists that the strategy is that people idolize and has this ongoing halo effect of fang logos, logos. I hired quite a few different designers and researchers in the past few years, and whenever there is the logo mentioned or a specific brand mentioned in a resume, it's not like myself would think of it and how differently, but anyone else involved, specifically who don't do design or UX, they just lose their minds because
they get all giggity over it. Go ahead.
No, just to add to it, I think it's also a strategy which in a way keeps you quiet, future proof, because a lot of the people who especially don't know how messy the things truly are,
right.
It almost doesn't matter how big the corp is or what they are focusing on, they lose their minds. So It's almost like having it also could act as a good signal in a way, even if maybe it doesn't mean shit in the end.
Right.
Let me bring this all back, because we've been around the houses a few things, right? A lot of this, what you're seeing is people using big brand logos as effectively a validator. Like, I know what I'm doing, right? I'm a beacon of clue, which is not true.
Right.
What this means is we have no education, no standards, right? So across product or the UX things. So people will listen and tune into anybody that they can. Now, we've been talking about, you asked, what could a 40-year-old with a Figma-based portfolio do? It's not their fault. We're gaslighting them, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Right? It's totally not their fault. It's the hiring managers.
Right.
It's that entire tier of leadership that are choosing not to. Now, I would also say, by the way, the lack of education has led to over complexity, right? The answer is actual simplicity. Now, if people know what they're doing and they can lead, like Tom was saying, smarter, not harder, it's very easy to abstract this right down to the bits that you actually need and get rid of all the 80% of the garbage that's slowing you down, that is not delivering value. That's what this is about.
Nick, how do you mean about hiring managers and, I guess, gaslighting it? Like, how is it? Like, to me, I'm not sure if I agree with you.
No.
If you're a 40-year-old with a Figma-based portfolio, you have a hell of work to do to catch up, especially to be, I guess, market worthy in a way.
Oh no, I understand.
If I have as a hiring manager, and this is an example to illustrate.
Sorry,
if I'm hiring for a UXer, and I have a specific project in mind, and I see a portfolio which is maybe just surface level, it's just not a fit. Like, there is no gaslighting. Sorry, but it's just...
I expressed myself wrongly. You're right. When I said Figma based, I guess I wasn't really thinking it through. I think you mean like a UX UI portfolio. And
basically,
I completely
more
agree.
UI than anything.
But there are people out there with, let's say, non-Figma based portfolios, but who are more UX designer, more interaction designer, more true user-centric UXer. They don't have to be the full article. The door is closed to these people. They're not even in consideration.
Right.
And the sort of rider to that is there is a work ethic, attitudinal difference between generations. We all agree that, right? Now, older people like us, we've got a certain work ethic, the old school work ethic. The new school have got the new school work ethic, which is kind of unfamiliar. The question I want to ask is kind of a rhetorical question. Is it not better to pay somebody a little bit more with a stronger work ethic?
No shit.
Is it not a false economy to pay somebody cheaper and not get the same kind of productivity out of them?
And to piggyback onto what you were saying a second ago, Nick, to clarify for you, little V, what I think is the gaslighting part is telling the Figma production designer that they need to earn their seat at the table and learn more of the business design acumen and the OKRs and the KPIs. And, if you don't know how to speak the lingo of business, you're going to be ineffectual. And what they're doing is they're expecting these glorified graphic design and production monkeys to be those traditional UXers that have the human factor stuff. And when they don't, they're railing on them for not knowing that information. It's like, how would they know it? Where would they get it from if they didn't get it from school? They went to a boot camp, and because you said you needed them to crank out design systems and buttons all day, You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Where would they
but
get
I
that
think,
information from? So
you know,
that's the
yeah,
abusive and the gaslighting part right there.
I know,
It's
I know,
expecting someone to be something that they're
yeah,
not and can't be.
I know, but to me, it's also like, there's a lot of stuff which is in your control as a, not your, as, Thomas, I mean, a
Yeah,
listener or whoever is
sure.
struggling. I feel like it's also like you have to have like a really decent and big level of self-awareness where you
Well,
realize, okay, this is my skills, this is the reality, this is what's coming. I mean, because we're all aging, I have to either get better really quickly, or I can maybe ride that horse and I have that Fang logo and get paid for those 300K, whatever was that
there,
example, and find another one, another position like that, and maybe be lucky, I guess. But I think for most of the people, like literally majority of the designers out there, most of the openings are not Fang. They're not big tech. They're regular mom and pop's businesses right
there's
now.
nothing
Who
wrong with
maybe
that.
it's a photography
There's nothing wrong with going
website
to work
or
there. That's what Nick
yeah,
was
yeah,
saying, and that's what I'm saying too. It's don't stop aspiring to go work for Facebook. First of all, Mark Zuckerberg is a huge piece of shit. All right?
Mhm.
Stop aspiring to go to these places where
Yeah.
Spotify. That
Yeah.
guy is not a cool guy, man. You know what I mean? They rip off artists. They treat people like crap. If you know anything, I can tell you stories about what they've done to me. Okay, the Spotify, those companies that we're talking about, they're not great companies. They're
No.
ruthless. They're
But that's the
ruthless.
sellout point, Tom. And to be fair, you, I, and V, we'd probably all do the same, right? If I could get through 10 levels of interview and all the other BS that goes on and then walk out with a 500K a year thing, I'm going to sell out every
Yeah.
principle that I've got.
Right.
And then I'm going to leave that place after a couple of years because it's hateful with
Right.
this brilliant badge to go make more money.
I mean, generally speaking, like if you take like the basic principles of behavior or first principles of behaviors, they're gonna choose these shiny things regardless of what the
Right.
background is, the history is. Like kind of going back to the next point and kind of meeting you, Thomas. I think it's almost impossible to correct course, and I think these are the environments and examples which set the example for everyone else what good looks like.
Right.
It's
To
not
me, if like a lot of the things which why tech has been on decline in terms of enshittification and user centricity not being a focus and things of that nature is because we have an example which might not be that great.
We're not going back, so we're moving forward. But I think it's
Yeah.
up to all of us to take an active interest in doing things that are more ethical and that are more righteous, and doing things that are really rooted in quality. Being obsessed with Taylorism, being obsessed with manufacturing cadences, and all this bullshit that has overrun our industry. That it's the death of us. It's the death of business. It's harming humans. And
Yeah,
if you look at people who really care about quality, and they're like Carrie Saranen from Linear, and you look at the stuff that they're doing, man, good design is good business. Caring about your users and customers is profitable. It's
Yep.
You know what I mean? So this idea that the only way you can make money is to be evil, is to be villainous, is stupid.
Do you know what? I've had this way of thinking for probably 20 years now. As I was coming up as a young professional, my friends were all Unix spods, geeks, you know what I'm saying? They went off in their direction, all became CTOs, developers, heads of security, all of that kind of stuff. I went into what was called new media at the time, what became digital, right? And digital was pretty much, it was kind of like the cool version of IT originally, right? It then became like this marketing version of IT, this market driven. And that's where we're at today. It's that marketing mindset, that CEO of product thing we talked about earlier. It's that top down mindset. It's a social media ego driven phenomenon, right? Everybody is like, it's all about me and I'm my genius and how brilliant I am. Whereas back then it was more like, creating a better, cooler world. Do you see what I mean? And that whole shift has wrecked digital. Digital looks more like a marketing department now than it does an IT department. And it should be a sub of the IT department, in my humble opinion.
Like it's a locomotive or a train which we're not gonna stop, right? Like it's gonna continue. We kind of have to, I guess, adapt to it in a way,
Right.
or work with it. And I
Right.
guess you two, like you just
But
chose a career as an IC, right? I wonder, like, to what extent, like, if I would be a devil's advocate, I would be like, guys, we need more managers, we need more leaders.
we have to have user-centric leadership, right?
Yeah.
if you look at this marketing world that we're in, or marketing driven world that we're in, the reason why UX has historically been so critically important is because we're the bottom up and top down. We are the only voice of the customer, any view of the customer of that. We keep everybody honest and we keep everybody quality. When UX becomes UX UI, you remove all that bottom up. We've even lost all the evaluative, which was as standard, which means there's no feedback loop. There's no nothing. And that's why we're a top-down entity building shit. And product people are they've been born into this top-down world when they should be facilitators of user centricity, guardians of it.
Hashtag Yoshida's iceberg of ignorance. Go look that up when we're done, all of you listeners and watchers of podcasts.
What made UX unique in the design spectrum, because there was a big design spectrum, if you know what I mean. We had all kinds of designers.
Right.
It seems now that everything just got clumped into. Like, if you're a classically trained, brilliant visual designer in digital or print, you're still lumped in with the Figma jockey.
Right.
As a designer. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
How do you that world?
And it used to be important to have all of those skills and to have.
But the UX one, the UX variant, like was a specialist one that was about understanding needs and turning them into a design solution.
Right.
And that needs into solution was characterized UX and user-centric UX. We don't do things by needs. We don't convert needs into design solutions anymore. We just top-down design by proxy using empathy and double diamonds what we think users need, or what the product manager thinks we need, or it's
that's
not
what's happening most.
Happening.
That's what's happening most, Nick. What you just said. It's at the PM's behest. Whatever the PM pulls out of his ass, that's what we're supposed to be going to do.
I would love to share with you something I spent all morning writing. You know the train spotting monologue? I've rewritten it. Not GPT, me. I've rewritten it, called product management.
Oh, cool.
It's pure fire, but I think it's napalm, so I've got to be careful if I actually drop it.
Are you planning to drop it on LinkedIn?
I think I might show it to a few people internally at my business, at my company first, because I don't want to put anybody's noses out of joint.
Yeah.
But it's absolute fire. Every single line is like a checkbox of don't do this.
I think I still want to challenge both of you, Phil. Like, because I think you both are unapologetic and confident in what you're choosing to do, and go about. And I feel like you're confident. Apart from maybe Nick, you mentioned that you're considering maybe escape if you have a choice or things of that nature, which we can obviously touch on as well. Quite curious about it, but I think, to me, if we were to want to correct course for UX or service design or product design, we need more people like yourself in those leadership roles,
right?
Who then can coach, empower, add more roles, fight the good fight, so to speak. Because I think it's a rarity. It's a rarity for someone your age, your acumen, your experience to be in those roles. It's almost like it's a sacrifice almost someone has to make, and why wouldn't it be you?
But my problem is that people. Okay, first of all, as a practitioner, it sucks working for many years, like 5 to 8 years, for random PMs. Some of them have been amazing. I've worked with some amazing PMs that have made me a better practitioner. No question. Right? Let's put that out there. But they are few and far between. The majority are a certain kind of a mid-20s person with no experience, lots and lots of ego, and making all the wrong calls. Right. And as a practitioner, being dragged around. Remember, we're the heavy lifters. I'm the one that's on stage in front of users all week, every week. Okay? That's stressful, hard work. It's like being a soldier being sent off to war unnecessarily.
Right.
You're wasting my effort, and you're not really have any empathy for the mental health hit or the lack of, how demotivating it is. Or when you cherry pick my research.
Right.
Like, that's awful, because there are nuggets there that you've just left behind that took me a lot of effort to find and to clarify and to present. So the part 2 to this is, and this is going to sound shitty, lots of people do not want to learn.
Oh, they want it handed to them.
Learn.
Joe Natoli, a couple of people online say this stuff a lot, where I get messages and they're like, just show me the template. Show me show me your process and the Miro board that just shows me, the step-by-step double diamond-ish type of thing to do. And I'm like, you got to get your hands dirty and you got to learn the work, because it's like jazz. You need to learn all the theory and learn all the shit so that you know what note to play when, son. It's not just like...
Yeah, but these people the younger folk have grown up in a world with a kind of a collection mentality, because everything is bookmarking this and, you know, sticking it in Google Keep or Evernote or whatever your thing is. It's a collector's, a hoarder of information
Right.
mentality. And you go
Scrapbooking.
to your library of bookmarks and stuff because that's your knowledge.
Scrapbooking.
What
Yeah.
it isn't is experiential knowledge,
Right.
right? Learned on the job, making
Deep.
mistakes, learning from mistakes in a
Deep.
safe environment with somebody pointing out. Most people don't even know they've made a mistake because they don't know it was a mistake. And if you
Right.
point it out to them, you're the bastard. You're
You're
the
the
evil
asshole.
old Gen Xer.
That
Yeah, I'm the
just,
asshole.
You just touched on something that's really important. That part right there, where you're the bad guy if you do any level of crit. There are two
Yep.
whole generations of designers, researchers, and everything PMs that have never experienced like legitimate crit. They don't
Yep.
understand crit. You know, and it's
Any designer that's come up through an agency, or any, like me, I've got a PhD, right? My PhD was defended. Any designer, whenever I've come up, you always have got to be able, when your design director or lead or somebody points at the screen and goes, "Why did you put that there?"
you better have a
You
rationale.
better have a reason right
You
there,
better
like
have a
that, or
rationale.
you're screwed. Yeah. And
It's
I've
because
grown up
I
ready
like
to
the
do
color
that.
blue. I like
Yeah,
the color
exactly.
blue. That's why I looked.
Yeah.
My Nana loves purple.
Yeah, or why is that padding there? Or why is that key line there? Or anything. You need to be able to defend it and justify it. Today, that top-down ego is like, I'm right, how dare you challenge me? And it's like, and that's why I don't want you to use to test it, because that's also going to bring more criticism of my ability, or it's going to expose my lack of experience because I'm not prepared to put the effort down, or I don't know how to.
The
Yeah,
obsession
but
with
gents,
fonts. Oh my
yeah.
god, dude! Don't get
I
me started with
Sorry,
that shit.
I want to no. I want to course correct a bit. But what do we do about it? Because
Okay,
I
I
get
know what
it.
to
You
do.
know,
I know.
this is like I feel like
Old
a
man
lot
shout
of
at
people
clouds.
are gonna be kind of like stuck with it. You know, they're just doing what they're doing. But like, what would we do about
I know
it?
what to do. Okay, look, just 2 seconds, right? This is why I scream from the top of my lungs on LinkedIn about involving seniors. Maybe seniors is the wrong word because it sounds like senior, like a Zimmer frame kind of senior, right? Or like a mobility scooter senior. What I mean to say is somebody with over 10 years of experience as a practitioner, someone who knows what they're doing, right? Those people are all sitting on the outside. If you, me, and Tom were all put into directorship positions of let's not say FANG, of major large corporates, right? We would instantly, within 3 months, turn that thing around and actually producing amazing things, right? So all we need to do is get that senior knowledge, what good looks like, somewhere up high so that it can percolate down. What we did was we put people who thought they knew what was doing in that position and could sell it and market it really well, but they didn't. And everything that percolated down was wrong. The problem now is that's a really big pyramid of expensive mess. And that's hard to just fire them all, retrain them all. That's savage. It's a really big mess.
Yeah.
Please answer me this one thing, V, or Tom. Why is it that somebody with no experience can then suddenly go into a director job? But yeah, I've got 15 years of practitioner and I go for the same job and they'll say, sorry, you've got no previous experience as a leader.
Maybe they're just using that as an excuse because we're not the right fit or something like that. But I don't really get turned down for those. Every now and then yesterday I got an invite to be a senior director at a large healthcare organization, and I declined it. I declined it because of what it was, and I asked a few real simple questions, and it was answering to a product team, and I was just like, that's not for me. I'm not going to do that anymore.
Run.
I'm not going to do that. So
I was a chief technical officer in the dot-com boom. Okay, I was a founder of a company. We grew it to 30 people. We were floated on the stock exchange. It was a big deal, and we grew it to 60 people. I had to fire 25 developers at the end. That's a different story. The point being is when I was young, in my mid-20s and late 20s, I was like, I thought success was C-level. I thought success was a director, and that's all I wanted to be, was to be a technical director or chief technical officer.
That's what most people think, yeah.
Yeah, and I got there quite young in my career, and I was really good. I went really fast and high. I was earning 6 figures at 30 years old, had a Belsize Park flat, Flash Place. It was all good. I hated it. My mental health was in the gutter. I was in pieces. Yes, I was working with investment bankers, separate, fintech. It's banking and it kind of sucks. But I learned a very powerful lesson that my aspirations weren't correct, or at least I'd made it. And I was like, this isn't what I want. I definitely don't want this. I don't want to spend all of my day in meetings and this soft skill argument negotiation stuff.
Right.
What I love doing is making things, meeting with minds,
Right.
doing cool things, making shit, testing shit, like being a practitioner, a craftsman with actual skills that I can build on. Like Tom and I are master craftsmen, if you want to look at it that way.
Right.
Yeah, but you see that's where to me is kind of like it's a shame in a way because
Well, we're
someone who is
surviving.
maybe
V, we're
so
surviving, and we're looking out for ourselves and our own mental
I know
health, but we're still making a paycheck.
I know I'm not judging because like everybody's like it's gonna be so many people who just have to pay the bills as well, and they
Right.
choose what's best for their family instead of
Right.
even themselves maybe. But like to me, it's like the flip side of that is that someone is likely gonna take that role. And if Thomas, we would double click on your example, someone is likely gonna land that senior director role at that healthcare,
Well,
position.
hopefully it'll be one of
And
the 3 people that I referred to them.
okay, yeah, but if let's say you wouldn't refer, then likely maybe it's going to be less competent, perhaps less less confident than you, or skilled or experienced. I see it also like it's kind of like someone has to take that bullet almost for the
Well,
future
it's
of
not. Remember at the beginning of the
yeah.
conversation when we were talking about environments of low intellectual honesty and low
Mm,
psychological safety. When people are insecure about what they do or don't know, they cope at work instead of thrive. And when they cope at work, they throw people under the bus. They're shitty. They blame people. You know what I mean? They're like, "Oh, I didn't do that. So and so did that. Why did you know? Why did you do
yeah.
that?" And it's something that they instructed you to do. Like I've seen this so many times in the last 5 or 6 years, where someone, they the darker demons of their personality are coming to fruition because they're in positions that they shouldn't be in, and they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing because they don't
Mm,
understand them, and they don't know when to raise their hand and ask for help, and they don't know when to trust the people around them to do good work. So if don't hate on us for not wanting to be involved with those people or be around them, and don't hate, especially what I said initially too, when women say, "Hey, I've had enough of being talked over, I've had enough of being bullied, I have enough of these assholes stealing my ideas." When women tell you shit like that, don't hate them for walking away from the business. I trust me, I begged a couple of people, I'm like, "Don't do this because the world needs you."
mm,
The industry needs you, and the industry needs people like Nick and I too. But the thing is, man, I got to think about my mental health. I don't want to be a drunk. I don't want to be mad. I don't want to, I got a wife and 3 dogs that are like my children, and I don't want to be mean to them. You know what I mean? So for my peace of mind, and for me to make the same exact money that a director makes as a senior principal, and I do,
Yeah.
okay, but I'm contracting, I make the same money they do, except I attend a third of the meetings, maybe even a quarter. I don't manage a bunch of people, and I interact
mm,
with lots of teams, and I have influence and power over all of those teams, not just in some bullshit silo.
yeah.
So
I
actually,
love.
I'm more powerful and more effective right now doing what I do as a SEAL Team Six
Mm,
of One, a SEAL Team One.
Yeah, you know what, man? You're making me sad for my contracting career, which was exactly that. High day rate stuff, earning lots more than the
Right,
people you're there for, with lots of respect because of the external validation, because you're
right,
coming in from external, so they listen to
right,
you. Unfortunately,
mm,
they changed the tax laws here, and they killed the fun part of my career, like the ability to be successful.
yeah.
There's something about external validation. The minute you go internally, it doesn't matter how successful you are or how you have been. People just shut down. They don't listen.
right.
They'll
No,
pay millions
because
to a management
yeah.
And you
consultancy
make
to tell the
enemies,
same thing.
and somebody hates you just because they hate your boss. You know what I mean? There's all that
Yeah.
stuff, and I don't get any of that. When I helicopter in and I solve a problem, and people keep me for a year to 2 years, it's
Yeah,
better that way. Trust me.
yeah,
It's my take maybe, but I also attribute industry decline because a lot of the people kind of don't take those positions which are necessary to fill in. I feel like maybe that's where we get those creative directors or people who never done UX kind of
Mhm.
stepping in and then sending ripples down, creating this pyramid of destruction for everyone else involved.
I've got an idea.
And this is what I'm battling personally. Like how do you balance it out? Because part of me says, well, someone has to take it. Like someone has to be there, to make better decisions for ICs, let's say, or
Yeah.
community as a whole.
Okay. I'm just writing this down. We for 2015 from 2015 to about 2020-ish. Transformation programs were everywhere, right? We've all been in
And
or part of one at some point, right?
innovation,
Yeah,
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 right,
right. Transformation was never really defined, and it still isn't. The point, but what they were really trying to do is transform into user centricity, because that's what drives the value, and that's what product people were effing up really badly, left,
right.
right, and center, because they only had half or a quarter of the story. The best PMs I've ever worked for are ex-UXers, UX practitioners who ascended to product management. So you've taken all of that hands-on skill and then ascended into a more of a management position, but they've got that pure empathy and local knowledge, right? So they're amazing. So in order to get to that user-centric transformation, we can't replace the C-level, we can't replace the design directors and all the others, art directors sitting in head of UX positions. So if the PMs tend to be older UXers, right? That is the real transformational change.
Said the same thing, Nick. If they're UX or service design people in PM roles, those people are going to be worth gold, because what they all want to do, what they keep trying to do, is these people who weren't very good at writing code ended up being PMs, and they're kind of like cat wranglers and job foremen, but they're not very good. But these are the ones that are all talking about doing continuous discovery and the Teresa Torres and the Marty Kagan bullshit. They keep talking about like they're going to be the researchers and the designers, and those people are not geared to do that stuff. But the UXers and service designers and those researchers are. They'll be, because let's face it, you want to talk about something that's the design and the UX and the psychology part. In my opinion, that's the hard part. It's easy to learn how to use Jira or Confluence and wrangle people and say, hey, all that kind of stuff, and write PRDs and user stories and epics. That shit's easy.
It could, that process, that procedure, whatever you call that way of working, can be baked into an app or a service app of sorts.
Right.
So it's actually kind of reasonably trivial in the same way that Jira does, work management.
It's not that complex.
No, it's really not. The complex stuff, you're right. Interpersonal methodologies, all that messy stuff that we do. But
that's the hard stuff. So for us to transition into PM roles is way smarter and way better than them trying to be designers and researchers.
Here's the kicker. Businesses will make a lot more money.
Right.
That's the sell. Make more money. Take these seniors that are sitting on the outside, give them some training in the ways of PM, and then watch the magic happen.
But you see, I'm again going to be a devil's advocate. I don't think it's up to business. I feel like it's up to seniors. I feel like the seniors need to be like, I want to do this.
I think it's up to the business, because the business perceptions are why they're hiring and firing and keeping people. They're keeping toxic people in place that are high performers, but they're vicious and they're stupid. Okay? And the people that know what they're doing are getting pushed out because they're like, dude, this has turned into something that I don't recognize anymore. This has turned into something that to me it's hurtful. It's hurting my soul. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. No, I know exactly what you mean. It's really hard to know what you know and watch very wrong things happening.
Right.
Not just a little bit off.
Right.
Like fundamentally, this is completely stupid, a waste of money, can't turn out well. And I've got to sit here in the passenger seat saying there's a wall coming ahead and we're driving full speed into it.
Right.
Turn left or avoid. And they go, nah. And we drive straight into the wall. And I've been in so many car crashes now. Right. And I can't do it anymore. I don't have the mental health. I don't have I'm a very resilient individual. And if I can't take it, it means I've had the shit kicked out of me.
But to come back to the point of, seniors choosing to be PMs versus businesses positioning them as PMs, I feel like still like the biggest agency point is for
they need to be willing to do that and to learn that.
No business is gonna kind of go out there and say, hey, these are the designers, let's make them PMs. Like that's just never gonna happen, because
I understand what you're saying now.
PMs, right?
Okay.
And to me, that's where like I'm always trying to rile up my community to kind of either step up or just choose something, kind of like, okay, I need to learn this. If I really want this, go ahead and do that. And I had the chat with Christian Kremlish, who wrote Product Management for UX People book. A pretty good book, as it kind of goes, this is the UX designer, this is a PM. If you really want to be a PM, learn these skills and you're on you're good to go. Right. And then a good progression path of like how you can do that. But I think, to me, it's still a shame because not a lot of people are considering those alternative paths.
They're not.
Because as you say, a UXer could probably make the best user-centered PM ever.
Well, you got to understand, they have to want to do that work, and that's more adaptive work. That's more administrative work. There's a lot of stuff that goes on with that. And there's a lot of designers who, we all understand, traditional designers who are like, man, I want to make things that are beautiful and elegant and that are usable. And there's a lot of badass researchers who have PhDs who are like, hey, screw you. I'm a scientist and I'm into human behavior. I don't want to go, wrangle cats all day and, manage trade workers with, lean bullshit, manufacturing cadences, and
Yeah.
safe and agile and Scrum. You know what I mean? That doesn't look appealing to a lot of designers and researchers because in the back of their mind, maybe their ego gets in the way, but they want to believe that what they do is special and far more important than managing a bunch of ditch digging.
No, and it's fair enough, right? Like it's up to everyone to decide what's right for them. I just feel like it's an option. It's one path someone could take.
It's a
for
smart
them,
path
you
for the
know?
right
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
for the right
Because
person.
some people again would write books. Some people are gonna do thought leadership. Some people, like all those things we already discussed. Some people might take a route where they just all marketing and sales for something, for some sort of courses or things of that nature. There's also like a path in that, right? Like it's quite successful, seemingly so. So it's
I'm a
yet
fool.
another
I'm a
path.
fool, gentlemen, because I'm still obsessed with solving problems and solving problems for people, and that's what makes me happy. I I can't, what Nick was saying. It was really just tickling my history. I made a lot of money 20 years ago. I made a lot of money about 15 years ago. I squandered a lot of money. I got all kinds of fun stories about blowing $2.5 million and drinking and drugs and doing all the wrong things at the wrong times of my career. But now I'm 100% sober. My eyes are wide open, and I am obsessed with solving problems for the largest amount of people that I can. And that's why I'm obsessed with healthcare. I'm obsessed with healthcare because I've lost a lot of people around me and a lot of dark things. And so I want to solve problems for as many people as I possibly can. And as long as I get a good paycheck, I'm cool. You know what I mean? And I'll negotiate my salary. I'm not going to say money is nothing to me and it doesn't mean anything. It does mean something. I need it to live, right? But I don't need $500,000 a year if I can't get that. You know what I mean? So as long as I can go to where the complex problems are and I'm challenged, as long as I'm valued and someone gives a shit about what I'm saying in my POV, and I can change things and save people money and I can change people's lives, that's all I want to do. And I know that sounds corny, but I just don't think a lot of people think like that. They're obsessed
No,
with the money. They're obsessed with the
let me give you
glory.
my perspective on that. Let me give you my perspective because I'm much more mercenary than that, right? Even though I might come across as something a more kind of altruistic. I want money and recognition, but I want it through my hands, if you know what I mean. I want to be able to do it for myself, right? That's by solving user problems and making them happy. I make my companies lots of money,
Right.
And I get glory and money and promotions and everything's wonderful. So I just want that. I want to be able to be the architect of my own destiny again.
Right.
But Nick, in the beginning you mentioned, which I want to kind of come back to, and maybe this is a good segue. I hope it is. You mentioned that you might, or maybe I'm paraphrasing it, so forgive me, but you said like you might maybe consider other options or escaping UX altogether, the tech altogether.
Yep.
Can you talk more about, like, I'm curious, like what would that
Drug
be?
dealer, bank robber.
Well, but look, if the world goes the way we think it is, and it's like PM driving agents, like an agentic toolbox, right, which represents us as practitioners. If that's the way it goes and I can't get in as a product manager or whatever, then I'm out. I'm totally out, because what's the point? Like there won't be any roles for us. We're all replaced by bots. What I'd like to happen would be to transition into a product management role where I'm in control of the agentic bots, because Tom, you, as a team of one, with what we know, 1,000%, I could build faster and better than anyone with more commercial success. And I will bet my house on that. That's a no-brainer. And I'm really hoping that whilst we're in my service lifetime, I'm still employed, I'm still alive, still not retired, I would like that opportunity to happen. But I would like them to fail fast so that we get the opportunity. If it takes them 10 years to realize that giving morons money and they squandering it with no ROI, if it takes 10 years to make that penny drop, then I won't get the opportunity. Do you see what I mean? So I just want that opportunity to build good stuff and get money and recognition for it. It's simple stuff, man. It really is.
No, it is.
I mean, the one thing I love about UX is that it's been an opportunity to feel good about yourself from a success and money and recognition perspective, and you're doing amazingly good work in the world, making people's lives better. Like when you've done any work with accessible needs stuff, like I've done lots of work with blind people or people in wheelchairs. It's incredible what you're doing for them. They love it. You're making their world immeasurably better in a palpable, measurable, daily way that not any other role does, or many other roles do. It's a bit like being a nurse or something like that.
It
like
feels
that.
good when you're in healthcare and you know something
Yeah.
you just did just saved 20 million people's lives, or helped them
Yep.
get their healthcare faster or better,
Yes.
help get claims taken
Yes.
care of. When you do shit like that, trust me, that's way better than a paycheck.
Yeah. Well, but when it comes along with a great paycheck, that's amazing, and that's the point. It isn't all altruism, and it isn't all being completely like mercenary. It's doing good and making money. That's
It's the
the way it
balance.
should
It's the
be.
balance, right?
Yeah, that's what I always believe in. Is we don't have to do draconian and evil to make money.
Right.
If you're smart and you know what you're doing, we can make money without being bastards. We
Amen.
can make more money. And that's what it's about. It's just people who don't know resort to shitty tactics and bastardy to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think
And
I've posted
Thomas,
about
what about
that.
you?
I think I've posted about that several times, in that I've said something along the line of really good customer centricity or customer experience with really good employee experience really goes a long way for helping the UX experience, the user experience. And the reason is, happy cows make better milk. You know what I mean? So I hate to refer to people as livestock, but happy employees, they make better shit. They create more value for the organization because they're obsessed with companies, and they're obsessed with doing the right thing, and they're obsessed with quality, and they know they're being treated well, and they know that, you know what I mean, that you're looking out for their best interest. And when organizations treat their employees well, and they know that you care about the customer, trust me, it makes doing the user experience, it makes all the other stuff, development, marketing, it makes everything else easier. But when you treat your customers like shit and you treat your employees like shit, then guess what? The product you put out into the world, and the products and services you put out in the world, are going to be garbage.
Let me just making note before I forget this. So for your audience, V, if people want to know what they can do, how can they self-skill or self-improve, right? The question, it's only a question. If we're saying maybe you want to consider learning some PM skills, right? Especially if you want to do it in advance of an agentic AI world, right? Because if we become a team of one PM, it's entirely possible, right? A UX PM, AI PM, right?
Yeah, very likely as well.
Very
I've
likely.
been hammering that message for so long, for the last few years, really. But yeah.
No, and that's almost probable, right? In which case, learning today's PM and whatever that style is, that's a team-based PM with team-based attitudes and team-based procedures, policies, what have you, ways of working. When you're a team of one and you're controlling bots and a stakeholder board or whatever upstairs, that what you'd learn today about being a PM, I don't think it definitely all can't apply. And I don't know what subset applies or what other stuff needs to come into it. The nature of PMing will change.
It will, but it's also, it's not going to be a light switch in my head. It's all transitionary. So, we are likely still going to live these years of transition between who we are now and what we're going to become, like skill by skill, action by action. Like, the PM of today is obviously going to be different of PM of the future, or that joint role. But I think it's going to be like a merger. There's going to be several layoffs. There's going to be another economic crisis and a conflict of sorts. Like, it's just inevitable, right? Like, I think it's also something which I'm trying to communicate to my community, is really to think about consistently learning new skills, like just developing. And then you were saying, it makes sense for UXers to learn PMing. It does, but I wouldn't stop there. I would expand the remit so you understand enough about development too, or the architecture of how things are developed, so you can also play with those variables, right? Like, you don't have to be a developer, but learning just a bit about simple HTML, CSS, JavaScript never hurt anyone, because you can then use the tools like Cursor, what Thomas shared, and you can already generate quite usable UIs.
One of the reasons why I left being a chief technical officer was because I don't read code. I'm not a coder, right? So how can you be a chief technical officer managing engineers, developers, coders, whatever you want to call them, and have to take them on their word? That's not management. That's not leadership, in my humble opinion. Right? It's the same, and it's the same thing we see in the UX world. People are managing people with more knowledge than they do, so you have to take them at their word.
Right.
And that's the one-eyed king kind of stuff, and that's why everything's gone to heck.
Yeah,
really.
I want to just finish off this session with one statement, and I want to hear your thoughts, though. I feel like with AI and emerging tech, and the Moore's law basically folding 10 times over every year. It's not even like doubling. It's just consistently spinning up, the progress. I feel like the ageism is going to become more and more prevalent, is going to be much more harsher. Whereas, even with the statistics I quoted in the beginning, people who are 35 already feel like they're affected by ageism.
Yeah, okay. If you follow the current trajectory, almost certainly, and then AI or agentic AI is the nail in the coffin, right? If we look backwards to look forwards, if we look at Victorian engineering or the way that our grandparents talked about quality of materials and the way that people learned their skills, very craftsman-based, long-lasting stuff, right? That all has eroded away to quick, easy, disposable, if you know what I mean. So what I'm saying is that same route to quick, easy, disposable is the same route to AI, right? If you know what I mean. It's like they're not hard, they're not skills that have to be learned and transferred, right? That there's no appetite for that, and we don't. The kids don't have the dopamine systems for it. It's just not going to happen. So if you want to look at this with really cold, realistic eyes, the age of the craftsman and the age of the experienced senior are dead, right? It died a number of years ago. We're just waiting for it just to kind of die properly, but it's dying a long, slow death. What will come in its place will be lots and lots of agentic stuff. The knowledge is in the system, not in the individual. And the individual is there to guide the system. Now, my pure hope is that this is where we come into play, because otherwise the tail is wagging the dog. And you cannot have AI suggesting stuff to a human being in the same way you can't have a developer suggesting to me as a non-coder, because it makes no sense. You can't trust the system. I can't trust that far end. So you need a human brain, human intelligence, human experience at the top of the AI stack. I fear that that's too expensive, or that brain won't be available, in which case we'll just be good enough. And good enough is the new paradigm for the next 20 years. That's my opinion.
I agree with all of that. I'm going to take us in a different direction, though, for my sign off. And that is this. If we look at the people that we're struggling the most with, who have the most power, if we look at the people who have written all of these books that we're talking about in our community, and the influencers, and if we look at the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Sam Bankman-Frieds, the Sam Altmans, all of these people, they're all a certain type of archetype, and they seem to have a problem with women and with creative energy. And I don't know how spiritual you are, but I'm just going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole for 2 seconds. But if you look at the Kabbalah, you look at like the mysticism of like Judaism, if you look at the Torah, the Tanakh, if you look at the Bible, if you look at the Upanishads, if you look at the Mahabharata, you look at all of these really important spiritual books, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, all these books are all based on this massive understanding of creation, of creativity. And when we look at the explosion of the Big Bang and we look at what created this universe, that is feminine energy. So what I'm saying is you can choose to mentor people. I choose to mentor women. I only mentor women, young women. And you can choose to uplift women. And I think the biggest problem in tech is there's not enough females in tech. I think the biggest problem in tech is we keep pushing away feminine energy because we're afraid of feminine energy. And the thing is, you're afraid of how it might make you look or emasculate you. But you got to be confident as a man in order to push this stuff and stand up and uplift women. And if you look at all of the women founders, if you look at some of the women design leaders, these are kick-ass women, man. They're smart and they're good. I can give you a list of all these women that I follow who really know their shit. And they're kicking ass and they're taking names and they're not getting any credit for it. And the thing that I find so just beautiful about them is they're not glory seeking. They're laid back in the cut. They're almost invisible and they're just silently just kicking ass. You know what I mean? And again, I can post a list of them on this post once you post it. But we can choose to uplift women and put more women in positions of power, and we can choose to pass this information down to women. You know why I don't mentor men? Is because a lot of them are like these pricks that are on LinkedIn. These obnoxious jerks who think they know it all and they're stupid. You know what I mean? They really don't know what they're talking about. And these young women, they're hungry, man. They're hungry for information. So let's uplift women and put more women in positions of design and research and create and power.
Thanks so much, Jens. This was really good and really good to chat about these things. I'm going to link the usual stuff in the notes for people who are listening and they can find out about you more. But yeah, it was really good chat. Thanks so much.
Have a good day.
Thanks very much for having me.